Hello, everyone. June 30th, this month in cyber. We've been doing this about almost 5 years now. Every month, just trying to break down stories that we thought might be relevant for you and your business as a unique way to kind of look at security. So without further ado, we do have a fair amount of content this month with regards to try to organize it in some topics. Ransomware, not only a few incidents that had occurred, but we've got, it's got some topic areas and kind of what to do about it in some of these areas too. So ransomware, authentication, and then at the end, I left it open for either tools and process. As it turned out, we have some stories that came in kind of last minute that really don't have a category to them, other vulnerabilities I thought you'd want to know about here in the month of June. So especially as they impact remote employees. So starting with the topic of ransomware, some big names got hit this month. Honda had to stop their global production for Honda vehicles for a day. You can imagine what the cost of that is, right? Pretty significant. It appeared to be, as things have been told, some servers in Tokyo that got hit, but they were corporate servers, and it was a snake ransomware, SNAKE. That detail just kind of is getting leaked out. There has not been a lot of information with regards to that breach, just the fact that there was a significant amount of downtime, and you can imagine what that expense is. And I wonder what that expense would be for your organizations if you had to shut down for a day or a week. Have you calculated that? And do we know what we're up against with regards to trying to prevent ransomware? A couple other names that got hit this month along that same slide. LG, makers of a lot of electronics, they had Maze ransomware. And prior to their Maze ransomware occurring, they actually stole 40 gig of data from the organization. So whoever hit them stole 40 gig of source code and then gave them ransomware. And also Mitsubishi got hit with Doppelpaymer ransomware. So, some big names just to kind of start things off. And for any MSU alums out there, I'm sorry, but the Sparty's been hit also. Michigan State got hit. They have chosen to not pay the ransom. The ransomware gang that hit them, and I do use the term gang, and there'll be a reason for the graphic on there. This gang is called NetWalker, and they're one of 12 known ransomware gangs that literally is a group of cybersecurity non-ethical hackers, I'll call it, where basically they have leak sites that are publicly available, and they basically take materials that they've stolen, they publish them to these websites, and then they give you ransomware. So kind of similar to what was happening with LG, right, where some code was stolen. So on the site, and so you can see who got ransomware hit, usually by going to these sites. And as evidence that Michigan State got hit, they put up there a directory structure showing the entire file server, a passport from several students, so student information, 2 scans of Michigan State financial documents. So this was just evidence that they were showing, saying, we got all your stuff, you will pay us within a week. And that's kind of the extortion part of things. And then separately, we'll also give you the keys for the ransomware that we laid out on your network. So these gangs are going in and basically causing mischief in 2 ways: extortion, giving you a short time window, and the ransomware keys. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1 BOGO special. And they don't mean to make light of it, other than the fact that this stuff is becoming, highly real, if you will, when people are targeted. Along come, I thought this was appropriate. It's in the ransomware category, but also had to do with the pandemic that we happen to be in too. This happened in, this is in Canada, ironically, that this story occurred, although the image you have is from Australia. So I'm all over the world with this stuff, but in general, the Canadian app, they were going to call it COVID Alert, and the country of Canada had decided that this COVID Alert application was worthwhile to test, putting on phones. They decided not to put it in, use the Apple or Google Play Store available apps, and instead come up with their own application. Well, sure enough, as they were testing it in a very small pilot group, someone came up with a a modification to the app for COVID alert. So I don't think a lot of us are going to be subject to it, but the fact is these apps, when people go to download them, it actually directs them from several different web pages to ask for a separate application to be installed onto people's phones, and ironically, will run in the background on your phone, tracking where you've been and who you've been in contact with. And it also does ransomware on your phone. It says personal files encrypted, see readme now _text for all of your files that happen to be on your phone too. So this stuff can hit phones. It's appropriate because it's COVID related, and there's reason to be guarded with regards to what you allow people to install or what you tell people to install on phones. Good old town of Knoxville, Tennessee. This happened ironically earlier in June. I think it was June 9th or something of that nature. I went to the website today, and sure enough, as you can see by the arrow, city online services are currently unavailable. Indeed, they're still down 25 days later. Residents don't have answers to basic questions. Has there been a spread to other city systems? Have emergency services been affected? What are the specific effects on operations, communications? There hasn't been a lot of communication, according to the Knoxville publications that I've been reading on it. Is there any information that would indicate personal or financial records were stolen? So I guess the other side of technology around ransomware is communication plans and incident response plans. And in this case, hopefully they're getting some professional guidance with regards to what they should be communicating and getting a lesson in how to respond. They equally are, I think, probably trying to make some decisions as to whether they're going to pay a ransom or not. There were several other cities as predecessors. Florence, Alabama, that paid $300,000 ransom just a few months ago. Cartersville, Georgia, paid $380,000. Lake City, Florida, paid $480,000, or almost $500,000. Atlanta, maybe about a year ago, some of you may recall, had ransomware on their servers, and they chose not to pay the $50,000 ransom, but it ended up costing them $18 million to repair their servers. So it's hitting cities. Oftentimes it's a Ryuk ransomware, R-Y-U-K, which is particularly nasty. So response plans are an equally important part of the learning here from Knoxville, Tennessee. This one was near and dear to my heart. Almost took away our beer, but they hit a brewery in Australia, and this time the brewery's name is Lion. They have 45. They're a brewer as well as a brewery distribution. 45 locations around the world, and they were down, and were down for a pretty significant amount of time. They basically, part of their early communication on June 9th was, we have no information was stolen. We're shutting down our systems as a precaution. This won't impact other areas of the business. Well, by June 29th, literally a story came out yesterday. The group alleging to be behind the attack, which is called Our Evil, probably another ransomware gang, published screenshots to basically suggest it did have a lot of sensitive information, including some of their formula information and so forth. Demanded a payment of $1.17 million within 5 days, or it's going to auction off that stuff to the highest bidder. And also, it also has information and legal documents that apparently Lion had for some reason on known personalities such as Nicki Minaj, Mariah Carey, and LeBron James. So, they're now doing the extortion portion of things as well as fighting the ransomware. So again, a trend that we're starting to see. And the good news is they said their breweries are still up, so the beer is starting to flow, but it sounds like they still have an issue with regards to their information security and what they're going to do on this extortion front. Near and dear to our heart, this is the FBI is now warning, and particularly just put out a warning specifically to schools for RDP access and ransomware coming in via RDP. So this was something called a private industry notification, or PIN. It was just put out to K-12 on June 25th, less than a week ago. Coronavirus is forcing schools to have in-person and remote plans, as we all know. Some schools are kind of opening up hybrid, others are opening up fully. But these ransomware gangs have developed brute force attacks and are looking for vulnerabilities in RDP ports to basically breach organizations. And specifically, they're concerned now about schools that are going to have to kind of in quick fashion potentially open things up to allow teachers, staff, as well as in some cases students to access resources inside their organization. They typically don't have very formalized remote access plans. So FBI is concerned about that, and specifically concerned about ransomware. If anyone that's been a long time pundit, if you will, of hanging out with this month in cybers, it was this year around July, August timeframe that a lot of schools were getting hit, especially as they were just about to open because they were hoping to extract ransomware in a time of urgent need, if you will, for systems to be up and running as schools were just about to open. So stay tuned on this story, and certainly as RDP access is one of the ways, I guess I'd point you to our solutions page, which, hey, how about that? Timing is good. I'm going to go through this quickly just because from a solutions perspective, I certainly have presented on this before. We are very prescriptive about what to do for ransomware readiness. There are 5 things we think that are no-brainers with regards to getting yourself ready to crawl in this space, and 5 things that are get you ready for walking in this space. You'll notice under the walking, port scans, RDP, looking for RDP changes and looking for why anything would have RDP port access. We look for those changes every day as part of our service for customers under our protective wing. So that's just kind of one area to look at with regards to ransomware and access. But for a slightly deeper dive on this, and again, I'm not going to spend time, I'll let you guys do this on your own. I do present the following rubric, I'll call it, which is essentially designed to have you self-judge. Okay, how many points out of 25 do you get? And then we'll just kind of follow one example. Let's just take next gen firewall, the top line. Give yourself a point if you have a firewall that's less than 3 years old and is labeled a next gen firewall. Give yourself 3 points if you've got a console to that and you look at the console with some regularity with regards to what alerts and warnings are being propagated by your firewall. And give yourself more, up to 5 points if you have both of those things and you update your next gen firewall on at least a quarterly basis. Okay, and you kind of keep going along those, right, with antivirus and malware and your backup, and do you have offline copies and patch policies and admin policies. Total points is 25. Again, we're not going to do this exercise now. I'd look for you to look at the slide deck at some when we post this as a blog and maybe go through that exercise. Equally, you could do this in the walking phase too. There's 5 solutions that kind of get you towards readiness with regards to this. Last time we did a survey on this and we had some customers walking through this, a lot of people were in the 30 points out of 50, right? Kind of low in the totem pole, and so some work was certainly need to be done, and we use this just as an eye raiser a little bit. All right, we're going to move into the authentication space, and here we've got down in the bottom right hand corner a little graphic of Iran and US kind of butting heads on this. Microsoft security groups are very concerned. There's a group called Holmium, again, probably one of those ransomware gangs, except this group specifically attacks through authentication means. And in this particular case, this group, they're talking about a organization where they went from, no infiltration on Monday to fully infiltrated, and the company's down for the count by Friday. All right, in a 1 week time frame, they started the password attack, or they started the attack with a password spray. For those that are unaware what password spraying is, it's basically taking, and I gave an example here in the graphic, it's basically taking spring 2020 as an example with an exclamation point. A decent password, certainly one that meets complexity, length requirements, and it's trying that password against all accounts, okay? And you'll notice on the left-hand side, Microsoft is on board saying about 40% of accounts can get propagated by a good password spray, right? Where you just take a number of different variables and throw them through the equation and find out which well-known passwords will break into those accounts. Once you have one account accessed, now you're in, you can plant, in this particular case, the organization used a tool called Ruler, which gives them complete control of the PC. Within the week, they look for other places in the organization to go and try to obtain quote unquote unhampered access and full domain compromise. That's what that kind of looks like, and that's how a organization got attacked within a brief time frame. Microsoft's concern is with regards to this group's effectiveness. If there's a particular industry or organization they want to go after, they can, and they've shown to be very effective at it through Active Directory. And so I bring up the next slide, which you may, some of you may have seen before, just to remind ourselves, this is Microsoft themselves. They look at millions, hundreds of millions of logins per day, or actually they look at billions per day, and they see hundreds of millions of breaches. Those breaches indicate that 0.5% of all Azure Active Directory accounts are compromised every month. So if you're a 200-person organization, you should expect one compromise a month. Okay? It's not really great odds, right? It is not in your favor to count on logins and passwords, as good as your policy may be, to keep people at bay. So you need to be monitoring when these breaches occur, or you need to be emphasizing and leveraging a different way of logging in, including multi-factor authentication, for which Microsoft says, by the way, if you're using MFA, there's a 99.9% chance the breach didn't occur on that account, because it's extremely difficult to breach an MFA. So again, Microsoft would say 40% of the breaches are through password spray, 40% are through something called password replay, where basically they take information that might have been seen out on the dark web or through other databases of logins and passwords you have, and just replaying those. Oh yeah, they never change their password from that account. I'm just going to use it, and sure enough, it's the same password over on their corporate account. And then 20% are phishing accounts, phishing where they actually are going after it. So authentication clearly is a huge monster problem, and it leads us to this, last couple slides here on facts and trends. So this is the percent. Oh, I wasn't supposed to give that away. The percent of hacking-related breaches due to compromised, weak, or reused passwords is 80%. The average number of times a password is reused. So if I gave someone the opportunity to reuse a password, would they reuse it once? No. They'd reuse it 2.7 times on average. They love reusing their password. Why not? If we had a really serious breach as an organization and we told everyone, okay, you got to change your password, how many people are going to change their password? Studies have shown 33% of people are willing to change their password even after a breach. Microsoft, remember I told you they look at hundreds of millions of password-based attacks every day. Here's what they say about it. When it comes to your password composition and length, basically it doesn't matter. Okay, so you can create rules and feel good that, oh yeah, I'm making my users go through 10 characters, complex, uppercase, lowercase. It doesn't matter. Okay. At best, I think his term here we defend against, and it basically shows that password rules are at best a distraction. So that leads us to interesting, trends certainly around here. If logins and passwords aren't good enough, what do we do? I tell the story here I saw about a traveler who was on business in Asia. This traveler noted that he was able to log into his VPN for work and life was going fine and accessing all his systems, and his bank notified him and said, by the way, we noticed you're traveling in Asia. We've suspended your account until you can prove that this is really you. And he's like, Well, that seems pretty intelligent, right? Why is my bank smarter than my company? Well, the bank was leveraging AI technologies to note location and take some immediate steps on location-based fencing, right? Is your organization doing that? So that's an interesting thought, right? Bringing AI and bringing analysis into the idea of authentication. Where are people logging in from? Certainly the idea of mandated passwords is becoming a trend. I haven't seen it personally, but the idea that that IT is going to tell you what your password is, or that we're going to create a password for you that you're not even going to remember, and you're simply going to use your password manager as a tool to not only generate the password, but to leverage that password moving forward. You might not know any of your passwords, and I'm not going to call it a passwordless login, which is certainly a trend also, which has different technologies behind it. But this is an unknown password or a mandated password or a password that's randomly generated and only tracked within a password manager and typically is not known. I mean, we generate passwords on our password manager that are 27 characters, uppercase, lowercase, all symbols, certainly not part of any dictionary. And last but not least, this was a report from a password manager. They've seen a 200, or actually from an MFA provider, we've seen a 200% increase in the last 6 months of adoption of multi-factor authentication. There is a trend towards MFA. We're seeing it in our customer base too. We're having a fair number of MFA projects going on now. We have something called the one-day MFA, where we're lighting up your admins and looking over your MFA policies for a 10-user pilot group and making sure they have a good experience. It's just that simple, right? Get it started within your organization, especially around the identities that matter. And so to that end, I would say, again, we're not going to do this exercise now. We have prescriptive guidance on how to get your authentication up to snuff. It starts with separating your admin IDs, making sure that someone who has admin credentials has a separate admin login than their personal login, right? They log in, they get their mail through their personal login, they log in and do admin activities under their other login. Separation of identities, right? MFA enable those admin identities. In Office 365, it's included. There's no cost. Why are you not doing it, right? It's some of these things, and some of it's just knowledge, and some of it's, hey, what's my experience going to be like, and how do I accommodate for this or that? So a number of things you can get done. I'd pay special attention to legacy protocols. Number 5, Office 365, in addition to our modern authentication, which Microsoft's trying to move everyone along to. They have a host of about 15 other protocols, including POP and IMAP, which have been popular protocols to take advantage of by others trying to skirt around regular authentication protocols. So certainly disabling them's one thing, but sometimes you need to look at your readiness to disable them, and that's a service that we can help you with if necessary. So more things to judge yourself on. All right, in the closing minutes here, three stories I thought that would be relevant for you. This one's highly relevant in that a lot of our employees are likely coming at us and working remotely at this point, and we have very little visibility into what routers or firewalls they might be leveraging at home. One of the popular consumer brands that people are often leveraging at home is Netgear. Netgear just on yesterday announced some router models, approximately 90 of them. I gave you the list on the right in a very small fashion, not to have you look it up. Oh yeah, I wonder what model numbers I am, but instead just to show you there's a lot of model numbers, right? And a lot of families that basically they've discovered some vulnerabilities with regards to the management of those Netgears. They also recommend disabling web-based monitoring and management of those Netgear models. So I'd ask you to look at the Department of Homeland Security notification or the specific model listings for what those are. You also should be updating to the latest firmware, managing through their application called NetHawk with a strong password. Don't share the password, monitor the router logs. All of these things kind of need to get done. You got to rely on your end users to do it because they're in a spot where those routers are not managed by IT. And a layer I'd put on top of that is if you really don't want to monitor that and be concerned about that, an area where I'd point you to is probably our umbrella service, which is looking at what where their browsers and applications and so forth are having conversations with. So from your managed device to the internet, what do those conversations look like and are they appropriate? And Umbrella, through its DNS layer, will actually evaluate all traffic from their device to the internet, independent of whether there's a Netgear or a firewall or anything in between them. It's a protected client, and Umbrella can provide a lot of crutches, I think, in that space if you want to ignore management of gear in between here and there. Another area, and this is kind of a little more nomenclature than anything else, but certainly important. We always talk about business email compromise. Another piece of vernacular, I'll call it, is island hopping. Island hopping is used in 50% of all attacks. Island hopping, from what I'm seeing, and it's an interesting term, but if you kind of look at the steps over on the right, step A and to B, in addition to the extortion, in addition to the ransomware, one of the things they're doing prior to that, and this is right after identities have been compromised and they've got access, is they're sending emails out to your vendors, suppliers. They're sending out invoices and hoping for payment. So this is yet another method. While they're in there for the week, if they breached you on Monday, on Tuesday they're sending the emails, on Wednesday they're stealing some stuff, on Thursday they're infecting you with ransomware. So it's a full kill chain of items, and island hopping is one where your vendors are getting involved. So we ourselves have gotten emails from customers and suppliers who have been compromised, and fortunately through our technology and process and people, we're able to see a lot of those come in, as we are oftentimes company B, if you will. So we're all connected, right? And island hopping is one way for them to get from a breach of your vendor or supplier or another customer into your account and have your customers get breached. So island hopping. And last but not least, we have side channel attack. Nothing dramatic here. Side channel attack is something where I like the quote that I put up there as kind of the best description, and it kind of matches the graphic on the right. But some examples of side channel attacks: listening for hard drive electrical emission. Okay, if anyone's that focused on grabbing my stuff, right? I'm not super high security, but if they're going to listen to my hard drive electrical emissions, they probably have my information. By the way, I think I'd see them looking close to my hard drive. But here's some other ones that are interesting side channels. Keyboards clicking can reveal a user's password through sound alone. So someone's typing and you're on a call with them and you hear the typing. Done properly, you can determine what keys those are and determine what they typed. As one example of a side channel. Different power draws by electronics to determine what's going through it. Oh, nobody would ever listen to my power draws. Oh yeah? Does anyone remember Intel and AMD having this thing called Meltdown or Spectre, where there actually was code next to chips that was listening for the sounds emanating from Intel and AMD chips and providing that as a source? And there was a lot of concern regarding what goes through the computer and what can be heard by chips. And so a lot of machines had to be destroyed. So, and then another Big Brother example is microphone can pick up sounds of a computer as it performs decryption. And so you can, if you hear the bursts of encrypted data sent to a web browser, you can reveal what Netflix or YouTube videos someone's watching. So again, a lot of interesting examples. Side channel attacks are popular in the Meltdown and Spectre. They're very kind of techie geeky, but I thought it was kind of interesting nomenclature for us to at least learn about as a group. So, all right, with that, I guess I just point you to the fact that I think you've seen this enough, but I do want to point out the fact that the three items that are coming up here, security review, port scans, and security awareness, are directly analogous to free trials that we have of all of those services: security review, phishing, and a vulnerability scan. So if you have interest in that, great. And recently we added for qualified customers free trial. Cisco's offering the software for free, and we'll put some skin in the game and get you up and running on Cisco Umbrella for your environment for the right customers and the right qualified situations using Cisco Umbrella and evaluating all internet-based traffic. So that's kind of one thing. I would like to point out that we have a webinar series coming up, and this is a 6-part series. It starts here in July 8th. We're going to do 30-minute deep dives on how to do patch management, how to do endpoint security, how to do backup and recovery. And specifically, we're covering our managed service around it, but we're going to articulate best practices around people, process, and technology in order to get this accomplished best, right? We're going to try and be very prescriptive about what should be done in these spaces. So if you have gaps in how you're doing it or want to evaluate how it might be done by a qualified organization such as ourselves, here's a schedule laid out. Again, just point your browser to peters.com events, and you would go there. These are the dates, and we would look forward to having you. I don't know if there's any questions in queue. That is all the content we have for June, but very much appreciate everyone attending this month in cybersecurity for June, and that ends our presentation outside of any questions.